Hey folks, this is a remaster of a video I did a few years ago that was popular. It has good knowledge in it, so I decided to fix some audio issues, enhance with B-roll, and let a whole new generation of viewers catch this.
A little TEOTWAWKI break here with a little break in the weather, so I thought I'd get outside and we'll do a little outside footage while I talk to you about a very important topic, and that is what would happen if there is a true food shortage in the United States. Stay with me now. All right, folks, so thank you so much for staying with me. So I am broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location. And as you know, if you've been in the prepper community or homesteaded community or anything like that, there was a lot of talk this year about food shortages. And then prior to that, it was dark winter, right? So we saw some shortages, right, in certain areas, certain stores. I know particularly Walmart had a hard time keeping things stocked up. And it's just, you know, it wasn't widespread, not what I would call a food shortage. There was a choice shortage, right? Choice shortage, having a hard time there. Choice shortage. So, but what would happen if it really did get bad? Let's talk about that. So there's 4 things I want you all to know. And let's start with the first one, grocery store. Let's talk about the grocery store. Now, if you've heard me talk about some of the things that I learned from my grandmother in the past, from her growing up in the Great Depression, she talked about, you know, growing up in Boston in the city during the Great Depression. And of course, your experience in the city is going to be very, very different than, you know, rural areas, country areas, farmland, that kind of thing. So grocery stores, let's talk about that first. So the number one thing to remember is that during the quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, the start of the pandemic, there was a shortage of toilet paper of all things, right? And Canadian Prepper was the one who predicted this, so you got to give some props to him for that. But the key takeaway from there is that people were actually getting into fist fights in the grocery store over rolls of toilet paper. So the question I would ask you to ask yourselves is, what would happen if it was a true food shortage, right? What would happen if you couldn't find food for your family, or other people were competing for food for their family at that time? If people were willing to fist fight over toilet paper, imagine what they would do if they couldn't have food for their children, right? So the most likely situation is that food would be intermittent, shipments would be intermittent if there's a true shortage. You know, it's not like the grocery stores would go empty and then, you know, never fill back again. That's something else. That's what we would call, you know, the TEOTWAWKI, which is basically you're going to have to figure out something else for your food at this point, right? So the key takeaway there would be that you're going to need to be flexible and keep an eye out. And this is something that my grandmother did tell me about the Great Depression. You know, food would come in and go. Sometimes it was like in the form of charity. Sometimes it was soup kitchens. Sometimes it was, you know, they would just set up a shop for a day where they were giving away sugar and flour or whatever from government assistance, right? So all those things are possible. And then the grocery stores, like when they get stuff in, you need to be ready to jump on it fast because word will spread fast, right? So this is where your mutual assistant group and your networks could help each other out, right? So if one person finds out that Kroger has a shipment of produce today, then, you know, they get the word out to the group and get there as fast as you can, right? Also, mutual assistance groups could potentially, you know, if they're not putting limits on it, could like buy stuff for a couple families and share and split, and then the next time somebody finds like proteins or whatever, it's their responsibility to pick that up and share it with that family, that kind of thing. One of the benefits of having some mutual assistance groups. All right, now, so the next thing I want to talk about, number 2, is proteins, hunting, fishing, things like that, right? So those who lived in the rural areas during the Great Depression, allegedly things got hunted out pretty fast, right? So if your plan is, well, I'll just go take a deer once in a while, or I'll go take a wild turkey once in a while, an issue with squirrels going near extinct, right? Because people were making squirrel traps and eating the squirrel protein, right? So just something else to think about. If your plan is only hunting and fishing in those situations, I hope you've got a backup plan. So number 3, I don't need to worry, Sarge. I got a garden. Okay, that's fine. What about the werewolf preppers? And for those who don't know, I think it's kind of a crazy, ridiculous term. I don't know who came up with that, but the werewolf preppers is basically the raiders who are planning on taking whatever you have at force if necessary, right? And you don't even have to think of it like that. Just think about hungry neighbors, right? I live in the city, right? I know this doesn't look like it here, but I'm out on a trail. I live in the city, and everybody in my neighborhood knows I garden, and I know who else is gardening in my neighborhood, right? So can I stay awake 24/7 to guard my garden? Not really, but if I have mutual assistance with a neighbor, maybe we can split up the rotation there, right? So just another thing so just another thing to think about is that, like, in Europe, at certain points in history, they would plant the garden, like the families would have their garden, and then there would be a plot of the garden that was dedicated to people that needed it, homeless people, whatever, that were wandering through. You know, I know during the American Civil War, there was a lot of like pillaging of people's gardens too. So that's something that, you know, it's conceivable that unless you've got a very stealth garden that nobody knows about, people are gonna know it's there. If people get hungry enough, they're gonna get desperate enough, right? So just something to think about. That's number 3. There's different ways to solve that problem. Obviously, if you can split it with a couple other families and somebody takes turns keeping a watch on that, especially at nighttime, then maybe that solves that problem. Or maybe, you know, you think about the people in your neighborhood, you know, if you plant a little bit extra and you tell them that they can take from that plot there when they need to, maybe they'll have your back and kind of keep an eye on things too. A couple solutions for a big problem. All right, that's going to bring us to our 4th and final topic today, which is what about foraging, right? So just on my path through here, on my way to coming to this location, I spotted mulberry, I spotted muscadine grapes, I spotted peppervine, I found some American beautyberry, I found yapon. What else? I think that was it. Did I say mulberry? Yeah. So just in like the little bit of time that it took me to get to this trail, I found those things. Now, I haven't really been paying attention because I'm talking to the camera now, but I'm sure I passed a bunch of other wild edibles here and medicinal plants. So foraging is kind of a nice option because most people, you know, I just found plantain as I looked down there too. Most people do not know what it is that they're looking at with foraged plants, right? They'll just walk past it, and because they're not sure and they haven't trained on it, they won't take the chance, which is smart. If you haven't trained on it, you shouldn't take the chance. Some things can outright kill you, right? But you should know, and the time to train for this now is you should know like between 5 and 10 of the edible plants in the most common ones in your area. There's some beautyberry over here. Let's go take a look at this. And look at that. I just happened to be walking past this. I actually didn't know this was here. But look at these gorgeous beauties. Look at this. Holy smoke. This is one of my favorite plants, y'all. Look at that. And I'm gonna try a little one right now. I don't really have permission to be foraging out here, but. So what do they taste like? Hard to describe. They're not unpleasant. They have a little bit of a grape taste on the front, almost like grape cough medicine is the way to describe it. So not, you know, that's why you don't see something like that in the grocery store, but people make jams out of those and you can eat them raw, as you just saw. I just ate them raw. That's the cool thing, right? Is that, sorry, not sure about that one, so I'm not gonna mess with it. A lot of people don't know what foraged plants they can and can't eat in their area. You want to know like 10 of them. You want to have them memorized so that, like, just like I just did, just walking by, you're like, oh, that's beautyberry, right? Or that's plantain, or that's wild lettuce, or that's wild onions, right? Or that's chanterelle mushrooms, right? You want to know as many as you can, but I would say minimum of 10. Start with 5 because 5 is easier to learn, and then learn 5 more. And then every time you hike, you try to find them, right? And you would find that they're all over your neighborhood, a lot of these things. And so you can, you don't even have to go too far, but I try to know the trails within 5 miles of my home base. And I try to know, where I can forage within a couple miles of my house. Now, the other thing you could do is you can plant some of this stuff, some of these foraged plants around your house. And the person who comes in to steal your garden in the middle of the night is going to walk right past this stuff because most of the time they're not going to know what it is. And even things like roses, the petals are edible and they're not bad tasting. A lot of flowers, you need to know which ones you can, but a lot of flowers are edible. And, if you plant things like wild lettuce, people are just going to think it's a weed growing in your grass, right? But meanwhile, it's edible and medicinal. Actually helps to manage pain. If you have a yapon tree, then you've got an unlimited source of caffeine, which perhaps you could sell that in a true food shortage situation. You could sell that to all your friends who are caffeine and coffee and tea addicts, right? All right, I hope this gives you some idea. The truth is, I am, not worried about food shortages right now. This is just kind of one of those, fun SHTF situations that, like, what would you do if, right? what are some of the things you need to be considering?
You know, one of the things that I really love about silver and gold as a prepper is that it is one of the most anonymous forms of currency in the world. Did you know that right now somebody somewhere in the world is using silver and gold to get out of a war zone and taking their silver and gold into a new country and exchanging it anonymously for the new form of currency? Silver and gold is the only form of financial currency that has survived collapse of empire after empire for thousands of years. Folks, I've been partnered with APMEX for a few years now, and I'm really happy to endorse them as a brand. Really excited to be able to talk to you about them whenever I get the chance. I've ordered from APMEX myself for years, always get exactly what I've ordered. It's always shipped discreetly, so it's not broadcast to the delivery driver what exactly is in the package, so there's no security risks there for me. I've been super happy with them, and I know numerous people in my audience have used them, and they've also been really happy with the results. So in my opinion, it is the safest, most reliable way to order silver and gold online. You can always check them out using my link that I'm going to put on the screen right now, and that helps me out because it tells them that I've been a good brand partner with them when people use my affiliate link. It's no extra cost to you, and I'm actually not getting a specific commission when you use that link, but it does tell them that I'm being a good brand partner for them, okay? So please check them out and tell them Prepping with Sarge sent you.
All right, I hope I gave you some ideas. I really appreciate everybody. If you got anything of value out of this video at all, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing with the bell notification on. You got to have that bell notification on. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are my returning viewers, I thank you so much. I really appreciate you all. I have the best audience ever. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.